Have you ever wondered what mystery lies behind a cat deliberately blocking your path or silently watching you from a doorway? In this comprehensive analysis of MeowTube, we'll decipher the secret code of feline communication, revealing everything from their touching ways of saying "I love you" and their deepest hunting instincts to the subtle warnings they send us long before they bite. We guarantee that after watching this video, you'll understand your feline companion on a level you never thought possible. If you're ready to strengthen your bond and become an expert in their language, subscribe now and join us. Welcome to MeowTube, the channel for cat lovers. Part 1. The language of affection. How your cat says "I love you." We often find ourselves immersed in our daily routines, moving through the spaces of our home with a defined purpose, going from point A to point B, and in the middle of that journey, with a subtlety that borders on the deliberate, a familiar figure appears: our cat. It gets in our way, sometimes sitting with imperturbable calm, other times actively moving to intercept our path. The initial reaction of many is to consider it a minor annoyance, an endearing obstacle, but an obstacle nonetheless. However, what if I told you that this seemingly trivial act is actually one of the most significant and fundamental gestures of communication that your feline can offer? This behavior, far from being a mere whim, constitutes a social opening, a formal greeting in the complex and nuanced language of cats. By blocking our path, our cat isn't trying to bother us, it's seeking recognition. In the feline world, indifference is a powerful signal, as ignoring another being is denying it its social relevance. Therefore, when a cat deliberately positions itself in our path, it is performing an action that compels us to stop and acknowledge its presence. It is its way of saying, "I see you, I recognize your importance in this territory we share, and I wish for you to recognize mine." This act is the preface to its book of affections, the first line of a dialogue they invite us to engage in. Understanding it not only changes our perspective on everyday behavior, but also opens the door to a much deeper understanding of the emotional universe of these fascinating animals. Join me in this first act of our analysis as we decode the sophisticated and moving language of feline affection. To delve into this lexicon of affection, we must begin with its most tangible expression and perhaps one of the most gratifying for any owner: headbutts and rubs. When a cat presses its head against our leg, our hand, or even our face, and then rubs its cheek and side, it is performing a ritual of vital social importance, known in ethology as bunting or rubbing marking. This behavior is driven by a network of sebaceous glands located at strategic points on its body, on the chin, lips, cheeks, forehead, and at the base of the tail. These glands secrete pheromones, which are chemical messengers imperceptible to our sense of smell, but which, for cats, constitute an extraordinarily rich source of information. Specifically, feline facial pheromones are signals of appeasement, familiarity, and affection. When a cat rubs against us, it is not only gathering information about us through its keen sense of smell. More crucially, they are depositing their own scent on us. This act of sharing smells is the cornerstone of social cohesion in a cat colony. By imbuing us with their olfactory signature, they are integrating us into their group, creating a communal scent that identifies us as a safe and trusted member of their family. It is a gesture that erases the boundaries between species and declares us, in their own chemical language, as one of us. It is an act of possession, yes, but not in a sense of dominance, but rather in a sense of belonging. They are marking us as part of their inner circle, a place of shared safety and affection. But the language of feline love isn't limited to physical contact. It's also expressed through the gaze, in a gesture of extraordinary subtlety and depth: the slow blink. In the animal kingdom, and particularly among predators like felines, a direct and sustained gaze is often a sign of challenge, a threat, or an assertion of dominance. It's a visual confrontation. Therefore, breaking that tension is fundamental to communicating peaceful intentions. The slow blink is precisely that, the antithesis of a threat. When a cat looks at us and deliberately closes its eyes slowly, only to reopen them with the same deliberation, it's conveying a message of absolute trust. By closing its eyes even for an instant, it places itself in a position of total vulnerability. It's an act that unequivocally communicates that it feels so safe and relaxed in our presence that it isn't afraid to let its guard down. This gesture is universally interpreted by feline behavior experts as a sign of affection and trust, more the feline equivalent of a smile or reassuring nod. This is what's popularly known as the cat kiss. And the most fascinating thing about this form of communication is that it's bidirectional, and we can replicate this gesture to let our cat know that we trust them and that our intentions are peaceful. By making eye contact from a safe distance with a gentle gaze, we can blink slowly. It's very likely that if the cat is receptive, they will return the gesture, establishing a cycle of mutual trust that strengthens the bond in a silent but incredibly powerful way. Continuing with vocal and tactile expressions, we encounter two of the most iconic and at the same time complex behaviors, purring and kneading. Purring is, by definition, the sound of feline contentment. However, reducing it solely to an expression of happiness would be an oversimplification. Physiologically, purring is produced by the rhythmic vibration of the laryngeal and diaphragm muscles. While it's true that a cat purrs in states of deep pleasure and relaxation, science has shown that it also does so in situations of stress, pain, or fear. In these contexts, purring acts as a self-soothing mechanism, a kind of vibratory mantra that helps them regulate their own nervous system and cope with distress. It has even been theorized that the frequencies at which purrs vibrate, between 25 and 150 Hz, may have therapeutic properties, promoting the healing of bones and tissues. On the other hand, kneading, that rhythmic alternating push with the front paws, has its roots in a cat's earliest kittenhood. Kittens need their mother's belly to stimulate milk flow. The retention of this behavior into adulthood is a phenomenon known as neoteny, and when an adult cat needs us, it's exhibiting a regression to a state of absolute comfort and security. It's identifying us as a figure of care and protection, a source of well-being comparable to that of its mother. It is therefore one of the deepest demonstrations of affection and trust they can offer us. And if kneading is a profound demonstration, the act of showing us its belly is the ultimate declaration of trust. The abdomen is the most vulnerable part of a cat's body. It houses all its vital organs and lacks the protection of a rib cage or spinal bones. For a cat to lie on its back and expose this area in our presence is the ultimate symbol of submission and security. It's an unmistakable sign that it feels completely safe in its environment and, more specifically, with us. It's telling us, I trust you so much that I'm showing you my greatest weakness, knowing you won't take advantage of it. However, it's crucial to interpret this gesture correctly. While it's a sign of trust, it's not always an invitation to be petted in that area. For many cats, the belly remains an extremely sensitive area, and unexpected contact can trigger an instinctive defensive reflex, which involves gripping the hand with its paws and biting. The most respectful way to respond to this gesture is to appreciate it for the compliment it is. We can speak to him gently, and, if we wish to establish physical contact, opt for safer and generally more accepted areas, such as the cheeks, head, or base of the tail. And unless we know for sure that our particular cat likes belly rubs. Finally, within this language of affection, we must reinterpret certain behaviors that we might perceive as strange or even an invasion of our privacy. We're talking about the tendency of some cats to act as our personal guardians. When a cat sits on a doorstep while we're in a room, or follows us into the bathroom and waits outside or inside, it's not simply being curious or demanding attention, it's exhibiting social surveillance behavior. In the wild, cats form colonies where mutual supervision is key to survival. Strategic points like doorways are vantage points from which they can control the territory and monitor the well-being of their group members. By watching over us, they are extending this protective behavior to us. And they consider us a valuable member of their colony and, as such, feel the instinct to look after our safety. The act of escorting us as we move around the house is a reaffirmation of this social bond. They are participating in a group activity, reinforcing cohesion and ensuring that the family unit stays together and safe. It is, in essence, an act of loyalty and care, a silent declaration that we are part of their world, a world they instinctively feel the need to protect. Thus, we have learned to read the most tender chapters of feline communication, recognizing affection in their most subtle gestures. But this is only the beginning of our journey. What about those behaviors that don't seem affectionate, but rather something more primal and indecipherable? Well, why do they claim a ray of sunshine as if it were a throne, or patrol the corridors with the seriousness of a sentinel? In the next part, we will delve into their DNA to understand the inner cat. Stay tuned, because to truly understand your companion, you must first know the magnificent and wild hunter that lives within. Part 2. The inner cat, understanding your wild instincts. Having explored the delicate and often touching ways cats express affection, it is imperative that we now delve into a different but equally fundamental dimension of their psyche, the vast and powerful world of their instincts. To truly understand our feline companion, we must look beyond the relationship they have built with us and recognize the hunter, the territorial strategist, and the creature of habit that resides within. And many of the behaviors that baffle us, those that fit neatly into neither the category of affection nor aggression, find their explanation in the genetic inheritance from their wild ancestors. This second part of our analysis is dedicated to deciphering the inner cat, to understanding why they do cat things, transforming what might seem like random behavior into impeccable logic dictated by millennia of evolution. It is a journey to the heart of their nature, a nature that, despite domestication, remains vibrant and active within the walls of our homes. The first pillar for understanding this instinct is the concept of territory. For a cat, home is not simply a refuge, it is a domain that must be managed, patrolled, and controlled. And within this domain, certain places acquire paramount strategic importance. Hallways, doors, and thresholds are not mere passageways, they are control points. Tactically speaking, they represent bottlenecks through which almost all movement within the house must flow. By positioning itself in these places, a cat is not simply resting, it is occupying an observation post from which it can effectively monitor multiple areas at once, controlling who enters and who leaves its core territory. Similarly, high places, the back of a sofa, a bookshelf, the top of a wardrobe, constitute the second axis of its territorial map. Verticality is synonymous with security and dominance in the feline world. From a high vantage point, a cat gains a crucial advantage. It can observe its surroundings without being easily detected, assessing potential threats, prey, real or toy, and the overall dynamics of the household from a secure command post. This preference for height is a direct vestige of its ancestors, for whom a good observation point was key to survival, both for hunting and avoiding being hunted. Therefore, the instinct to occupy these spaces, whether a hallway or a bookshelf, is a manifestation of its need for control. It is a subtle dominance, not necessarily aggressive, but a constant reaffirmation of its sovereignty over the environment. The mere physical presence in a strategic location is a declaration of intent, a reminder that this space is under its jurisdiction. This strategic management of space is compounded by a purely physiological factor, but one of overwhelming force, the search for warmth. The image of a cat peacefully asleep in a sunbeam is universal, but it responds to a deeply rooted biological logic. The ancestors of the domestic cat, hanged that the African wildcat, evolved in desert climates. As a result, modern cats have inherited thermoregulation adapted to those conditions. Their normal body temperature is higher than that of humans, and their bodies are designed to conserve energy. Seeking out external heat sources such as a sunbeam, a running laptop, or a blanket is an instinctive, energy-efficient strategy. By absorbing heat from the environment, they can maintain their optimal body temperature without burning their own calorie reserves. This explains why a cat might choose, with a logic that seems incomprehensible to us, to lie down precisely in the middle of a busy hallway. If a sunbeam falls on that spot at a particular time, for the cat, that becomes the most valuable place in the house at that moment. Not their biological imperative to seek warmth overrides any consideration of human pedestrian traffic conventions. They aren't trying to annoy us. They are obeying an evolutionary mandate that prioritizes energy conservation and thermal comfort above all else. The second great instinct that defines the inner cat is, of course, that of the hunter. Despite receiving its food effortlessly from a bowl, every domestic cat harbors within it the complete software of a highly efficient predator. This software manifests itself through what ethologists call the predatory sequence, a series of linked behaviors that include searching, stalking, chasing, the pounce, and the lethal bite. Although our cats don't need to hunt to survive, the need to express this sequence remains intact. This is why they hide behind furniture to watch our movements, and or why they suddenly pounce on our feet as we walk by. It's not an act of malicious aggression, it's the pure manifestation of their hunting instinct. Our moving feet mimic the behavior of small prey, triggering their predatory response. Play, therefore, is not merely a pastime for a cat, it's a fundamental biological need. Play is simulated hunting. Through interactive toys like feather wands or toy mice, we provide them with a safe and constructive outlet to unleash their predatory instincts. Channeling this energy is vital for their mental and physical well-being. A cat that doesn't have the opportunity to hunt accumulates frustration, which can lead to behavioral problems such as anxiety, destructiveness, or redirected aggression. In this context, the act of blocking our path, especially if accompanied by a fixed gaze and an expectantly wagging tail, can be interpreted as one of the clearest and most direct invitations to begin a play session, that is, a joint hunt. Finally, we must address the cat's deep connection to routine and control. Cats are creatures of habit, and their emotional well-being is intrinsically linked to the predictability of their environment. They are masters at pattern recognition and quickly learn our schedules. When we get up, when we feed them, when we leave, and when we return, this predictability provides them with a sense of security and control over their world. When this routine is disrupted, it can generate considerable anxiety. This is where the herding behavior makes perfect sense. When a cat blocks our path and guides us with meows toward the kitchen at dinner time, it isn't simply being bossy or demanding. It is acting on its internal clock and learned associations, actively trying to ensure the routine is followed. It's its way of maintaining the order and predictability it so desperately needs. In a very real sense, they are trying to manage our behavior to ensure the environment returns to its predictable and safe state. Therefore, establishing and maintaining consistent feeding and playtimes is one of the most powerful tools for reducing a cat's stress. By doing so, we satisfy their need for a coherent world and lessen their need to resort to demanding behaviors, such as persistent blocking. Understanding this allows us to see their attempts at control not as a challenge to our authority, but as a self-regulation mechanism, an effort to maintain their emotional equilibrium in a world that, from their perspective, depends on consistency and ritual. Thus, we've learned to read the most tender chapters of feline communication, recognizing affection in their most subtle gestures. But this is just the beginning of our journey to fully understand them. If you want to continue deciphering every facet of your cat's behavior and make sure you don't miss the continuation of this analysis or our future videos, we invite you to subscribe now and turn on notifications. Next, we'll delve into their DNA to understand the inner cat and their wild instincts. Stay tuned, because to understand your companion, you must first get to know the magnificent hunter that lives within them. Part 3. Warning Signs. When communication breaks down. Having navigated the language of affection and plumbed the depths of feline instinct, we arrive at the final and arguably most critical act of our analysis, the moment when communication breaks down. This is the realm of frustration, fear, and unease, a territory governed by warning signs that, if ignored, culminate in a cat's most forceful defensive act, the bite. It is essential to approach this topic with a clear and unshakable premise. A cat almost never, if ever, bites out of nowhere. The bite is not the beginning of a conflict, but the end of a long and often desperate series of attempts at communication. It is the consequence of a dialogue in which one party, the cat, has been emitting clear signals that the other party, the human, has been unable or unwilling to interpret. Therefore, we must recontextualize the bite, not as an act of spontaneous aggression or malice, but as the last resort of an animal that feels misunderstood, threatened, hurt, or overwhelmed. Understanding this is the first step, not only to solving the problem, but also to preventing it, transforming us from mere owners into true partners in the complex conversation we have with our feline companions. Before a cat resorts to its teeth, it deploys an arsenal of warning signals, a system of red flags designed to de-escalate conflict before it even begins. The most visible of these signals is undoubtedly the language of its tail. A tail can be an incredibly accurate barometer of a cat's emotional state. An upright tail with a slight curve at the tip is a sign of friendly greeting. However, when irritation or overstimulation begins to take hold, that same tail will start to move. Initially, it may be a slight twitching motion at the tip, but if the cause of the discomfort persists, the movement will intensify, becoming wider, faster, and more energetic, eventually becoming what is known as whiplash. A tail that beats rhythmically and forcefully against the ground is an unmistakable and powerful sign of agitation and anger. It is the visual equivalent of a person impatiently tapping their fingers on a table. Ignoring this warning is overlooking one of the clearest cries in feline body language. Along with the tail, we must pay attention to the micro-expressions on its face, specifically the position of its ears and whiskers. A cat's ears are like mobile radars that not only pick up sound but also transmit its mood. Ears in a neutral or slightly forward position indicate relaxation or interest. As anxiety or irritation increases, the ears will begin to swivel to the sides, adopting the so-called airplane position. If the feeling of threat intensifies, the ears will flatten completely against the head. This is an instinctive protective mechanism designed to shield them from potential damage in a physical confrontation and is one of the most serious signs that the cat is in defensive mode. Similarly, its whiskers, which in a relaxed state remain in a neutral position, will tense up and be pulled back against its cheeks in a situation of fear or aggression. This combination of flattened ears and retracted whiskers is a stress mask that warns us the animal's tolerance threshold is about to be exceeded. Finally, if these visual warnings fail, the cat will resort to audible signals, growling and hissing. Growling is a low-frequency guttural vibration that serves as a visceral and unequivocal stay-away warning. Hissing, on the other hand, is an explosive involuntary reflex, an evolutionary imitation of a snake's sound designed to instantly frighten and repel an adversary. When a cat reaches the point of growling or hissing, non-verbal communication has failed, and it is on the verge of physical action. If all these red flags have been ignored, the bite occurs. But what is the cat trying to tell us? The most common cause in a domestic setting is overstimulation, a phenomenon known as petting-induced aggression. A cat's skin is an extremely sensitive sensory organ. What begins as a pleasant petting session can, after a while, turn into an irritating and overwhelming sensation. The cat will warn us, its skin will prickle, its tail will start to whip, perhaps it will sharply turn its head toward our hand. If we don't stop contact at that point, biting becomes its only way of ending an interaction that is no longer enjoyable. It's not personal, it's a forced request for space. Another fundamental cause is pain or physical discomfort. A cat that is normally docile but suddenly bites when touched in a specific area is probably telling us that it's in pain. Conditions such as arthritis in older cats, dental disease, skin infections, or internal injuries can make certain areas of their body extremely sensitive to touch. Biting, in this case, is a reflexive defense against a painful stimulus, and a visit to the veterinarian becomes essential to diagnose and treat the underlying cause. Fear and anxiety are also powerful catalysts. When a cat feels cornered, trapped, or is startled by a loud noise or sudden movement, its survival instinct kicks in. If escape isn't an option, its only alternative is to fight. A bite in this context is a desperate attempt to create distance and an escape route. It stems from panic, not aggression. Related to this, but more complex, is the concept of redirected aggression. This occurs when a cat is provoked by a stimulus it can't reach, such as a rival cat on the other side of a window. The animal enters a state of high arousal and aggression, but being unable to confront the real source of its frustration, it redirects that pent-up energy toward the nearest target, which unfortunately might be the owner passing by. Finally, to be fair, we must clearly distinguish these warning bites from the so-called love bite. This last gesture is actually a gentle nibble or soft pressure with the teeth, not intended to cause harm, and is part of a social bonding behavior, similar to mutual grooming. However, even this affectionate gesture should be handled carefully, teaching the cat that human skin is delicate. And so we arrive at the conclusion of our journey, and with it, at the most important question: how can we rebuild trust and improve communication? The answer lies in two fundamental principles: observation and respect. We must become diligent students of our cat's language. This involves learning to actively read those red flags, the tail, the ears, the whiskers, and acting accordingly, stopping an interaction before it turns negative. It means respecting their space and autonomy, never forcing contact, and allowing them to initiate interactions. It means providing an enriched environment that allows them to channel their instincts safely, preventing the boredom and frustration that are often at the root of behavioral problems. And above all, it means never punishing. Punishing a cat for biting or scratching is profoundly counterproductive. Not only does it fail to address the cause of the behavior, but it increases fear and anxiety, erodes the bond of trust, and can make the cat even more prone to aggression in the future. Instead of punishing, we must investigate the cause and modify the environment or our way of interacting. By committing to understanding their language, from the subtle blink of affection to the unmistakable flattening of their ears, we transcend our role as caregivers to become their true confidants, forging a deeper, more resilient, and harmonious relationship based on mutual understanding. As we conclude our journey into the feline soul, we've learned that the relationship with a cat is a pact of trust, forged through observation and respect. Understanding their complex language, from a blink of an "I love you" to a warning hiss, makes us more conscious companions and allows us to appreciate the privilege of being chosen. Because this passion for understanding them unites us, we invite you to share your experience in the comments. If you found this analysis valuable, please support our work with a like and subscribe so you don't miss future content. Thank you for joining us until the end. Continue observing and honoring the extraordinary bond you've built. If this journey has fascinated you, join us to reveal the next great mystery of the feline kingdom.